Hello everyone, I am back today with a review of the sophomore album by the Norwegian/UK indie electronic group The Green Children, their album titled Connection, which was released on July 23rd, 2013. As I said, this is their second album, and I actually have it in a physical format, which is actually rare for me because I never really get CDs anymore. This was released through Amoeba Music, which was sort of their sole distributor of physical copies for this record. They had a sort of special deal with them. It was released digitally, though. I was worried at the time that there weren't going to be any digital sales, but I actually was able to get it physically because I pre-ordered it that way. And I even got it signed, which I thought was pretty cool. 10-song record is a follow-up to their 2010 album Encounter, which I have already reviewed on this channel and I will link in the description. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people on this channel who are viewing me do not know of this group. They are still very unknown. They have actually garnered some success, and recently their latest single, Dreamers, garnered 10 million views on YouTube, which has caused them to actually become a little bit more well-known. They've actually recently changed their name from the Green Children to just TGC as an acronym. Not entirely sure why they chose to do that. You know, they're still essentially the same group, and it is just these two, Milla Sund and Marlo Bevan. Milla being from Norway and Marlo being from England. All of the songs are written and produced by these two, Milla doing the vocals, Marlo providing the instrumentation and most of the production. They are this inseparable duo who write such beautiful, ethereal, romantic tracks that are always so uplifting, very electropop, very silky and sweet, with lots of different influences coming in from traditional folk music to Eastern, more sounding instrumental. They're definitely a group that I highly recommend if you are not familiar with. So I'm wearing green today in honor of them and their environmentalist aura, which is definitely emanating from their music very clearly. And to talk about an album that I think is definitely a good step in the right direction from their first record, Encounter. Now, I will say I think Encounter is a little bit more solid of an album in terms that it is longer. It has some more iconic single-worthy songs that definitely got them the attention that drew me in initially. And so there's things about that record that just can't be topped in a certain way from an album that is definitely a lot more under the radar. They didn't really promote it very much. They didn't do as many music videos. That's to say, of course, they never really had a huge budget to begin with. So this record is called Connection, and the first record is called Encounter. So in my head, that's always kind of meant that this album is more about deepening a already burgeoning relationship. Now, of course, this record's beyond just pure romance, but it's definitely a album that wants to get a little bit more under the skin. The opening track, Feel the Light, was released in 2012, along with the second track and third track from this record, Possessed and Kisses from the Sky, as a little EP, well before the album was actually released. Feel the Light is definitely one of my favorite tracks on this record, and it was one of the singles that they released and made a music video for. Unfortunately, though, the music video was not actually this big, fantastical set piece. It was more just shots of them performing live in different venues in mostly California, I believe. And it felt a little bit like it was just put together for the sake of being put together as a music video. The lyric video for the song was so beautiful. They made a beautiful lyric video when the song was released back in 2012, but they never really actually gave it the music video that I feel it deserves. You know, one with real costumes, one with real outdoor location shooting. So that was a little bit unfortunate. But then again, you have to remember that they're not working with a big label. They do have Nightingale Entertainment, but they are definitely not this big, you know, money funneling machine, so they're not going to have a ton of budget. So I'm fine with it. The song is so shimmery and so ethereal, definitely a step in a more esoteric direction for them sonically, as well as, of course, lyrically, talking about you don't have to see to feel the light, to feel the love. Talking about not everything is all about what you see with your eyes. Love is something that is beyond just that, you know, kind of narrow perception of reality that we have. The opening synthesizer is so iconic for me, and I remember actually hearing this song teased way back in 2011 when they were actually touring in California to promote their album Encounter. They were doing some venues in LA, San Diego area at the Viper Room, and I remember she actually performed this track back then, and I remember being mystified by it. And so I was very happy and eager to hear this track be fully released in its full form a year and a half later. So definitely a standout track. There's just something so soothing about the way she delivers the vocals. They're very close to the microphone, very crisp. Stay still for a while and listen to the beating of your heart, beating from the ground that you stand upon, beating for that friend, though you never got on. Still beating for the hurt that you've overcome, because when you were blinded, you could hear this song. So turn off the light, you don't have to see to feel the light. You are so beautiful when I see you glow in the dark. Though a lot of luck is easily lost, there's still love in your heart. Because faith has no eyes when you rise, so don't cry. I love that line, faith has no eyes. Speaking of a higher power that has no judging kind of factor or facility to differentiate us and separate us up into these different individual parts, we are all connected. And oftentimes our eyes betray us because that sense of differentiation of individuality can sometimes cause us to build barriers between other people. And the love that we should all be feeling towards one another should come from a place that is beyond that sort of superficial barrier of me versus you, where we're all connected. And so that utopian esoteric message definitely carries through the rest of this record. It was a song that got me so excited to hear the rest of this album. Definitely pushes it in a very beautiful direction. We have Possessed. Now, this was a song that actually caught me off guard because I thought the melody structure was a little bit unorthodox for them. It doesn't have that sing-song melody that just catches you right off the bat. It's definitely one that kind of slow burns on you. It has this beautiful verse-like sung structure that is very medieval sounding. There's something about Milla's delivery that it's very classical with an edge of like singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell, Stevie Nicks in there, which is always welcome. But there is something so medieval sounding about some of their songs. A lot of songs off Encounter had that feel. And Possessed starts out sounding very pagan, very medieval, something very almost ominous. And then it drops into an electronic beat, which I find a little disconcerting. And unfortunately, it does make the song my least favorite of the 10. That's not to say it's bad, but it's definitely not a song I come back to and listen to over and over again. Just because I feel like the way they're trying to create some sort of almost drop in a song that could, be a little bit more sparse and I think just more airy and kind of simmery, it feels like a dichotomy that shouldn't happen. I definitely find it a little bit grating. So Possessed was always a song that didn't necessarily grab me all at once, and I still to this day don't necessarily find it be a highlight of this record. The lyrics, however, as always, are extremely insightful. If you weigh my heart, it be heavier than 1,000 rocks in the river. Because if I catch your heart, I'll eat you alive. This coming from almost a more jaded, sort of bitter place, which is unusual for a duo that tends to want to take the high road in terms of what they sing about and in terms of the sort of idea of romantic love that they conjure up. This is coming from a darker space in that some person's heart where we all can relate to this idea of wanting someone so bad, but knowing that we have these bad tendencies to control or to manipulate when we love someone too much. And is that really love, or is that just possession? Is that something that we're actually just taking from them and not giving anything in return? And that comes from a very heavy and weighed down heart that needs to be lightened. So the need for healing is insinuated by the heaviness of this love that this person, that Milla is singing from the perspective of someone who feels as though that their love is too one-sided. And they're not good at giving back. They're always just taking. Kisses from the Sky is this upbeat, euphoric pop track that definitely was screaming to be a single. I wish they made a music video for this song as well. It's a little bit more of a pure romantic track a la Skies on Fire. It's definitely the sister song for that record, which was on their first album. A beautiful instrumental that carries this away on a feel-good record. There's not much else I can say about it. Milla's beautiful soprano vocals just carrying you through like an eagle soaring through the wind. Definitely recommend this song to people because it's a little bit more accessible in terms of traditional pop and electropop, and it gives you a good flavor or idea of what this band really sounds like. Sailor is a song definitely, I think, more inspired by Milla's heritage being from a Norwegian fishing village. She talks about being captain's daughter, wanting to board a vessel, going into different places all over the planet. She talks about going to Antigua and have they found Atlantis, singing about different, coral reefs and exploring this world by ship. It has a very nautical flair in terms of the beautiful, almost what sounds like a steel drum instrumental. I'm not entirely sure if it's more of like a keyboard synthesizer sound or if that actually is some variant of a Caribbean style drum to induce a very aquatic feel to this track. But it also has this swirling melody that just builds and builds. The song kind of just crescendos to the point where it becomes very adventurous and very, very memorable. I definitely find this track to be one of the more interesting, but also experimental tracks on this record. So the title track, Connection, is emblematic of sort of the thesis of what they're really getting at. It's also in talking and imbuing the essence of being one with nature and how important this is to understanding what love really is about. If you don't find the way, look up, because one day you'll find a connection and you will know that you're not alone. When you're all out of faith, I'll be there. The tide of the sea, the roots of the tree, the lock and the key. It's like you and me, a connection. In the beautiful bridge where she really reaches some beautiful high notes, where are you? You'll find me. When you're constant in your heart for a second in the dark, it could be brightening from the start if we don't remain apart. This track unfolds like a love letter to life itself and to the natural world. There's something very live sounding about this track. There's something very outdoors with this just very simple string arrangement to just carry you through. Definitely has also a very relaxing, calming effect. So it's definitely emblematic of where their music is at the heart, just so innocent and pure. There's something you can't help but enjoy their music. They're not going for things that are going to rub you the wrong way in any way, or they're not necessarily going for shock and awe. That's not what their music is about. They're just pure and innocent in their delivery, and you can't fault them for almost anything because of that. I don't know anyone who would listen to this and say that's a not fun to listen to, or it's not pleasing to listen to, because that's kind of their whole aesthetic. And some people may be like, well, I want something that's a little bit more interesting than that. Like, this is a little bit too sunny and a little bit too on roses and daisies. But to each his own. I prefer music to be just euphoric and beautiful. And I think that's what they always deliver on without fail. And that's why I keep coming back to them. And it's why they're still, I think, growing in popularity, slowly but surely. We Can Love Again is definitely one of the more acoustic tracks that has a more band feel. There's this beautiful guitar instrumentation. That Marlowe's guitar skills are beautiful. I almost wish they utilized it more on this record or on their records. If you know the song Black Magic off their first record, again, this is like a sister song to that, speaking about a burgeoning love where two people meet in possibly a dark and crowded room. This idea of, I can't wait to see you again. I think that there is potential for us to reunite again after meeting you, and I don't mind that you're being shy. I like that. I like that kind of approach. It's quite refreshing for your type of guy, she sings. And it's definitely a more, them going in the more sultry direction. And it's got this beautiful bridge where it has a more folk acoustic guitar instrumentation that feels like a folk dance, and it gives it a very distinct Norwegian feel, I think, in my opinion. So I like that influence coming through. You can just picture like a dim winter night in a bar somewhere in some Scandinavian city, and the kind of atmosphere and vibe it, conjures up around you. Unwanted Garden is another highlight song on this record for me. Now, this is definitely a track that is a complete love letter to Mother Earth, to plants, to being stewards of this planet, which is a cause that they are extremely passionate about. Tons of their music profits go towards their foundation called the Green Children Foundation, which works in many different areas of charity work and environmental awareness. So they're definitely a group that was never about really making money. They were always about giving back. And in Unwanted Garden, which is another track that I highly lament there was no music video made for, is a beautiful synth-heavy track, which feels like flying through a fairy forest. There's basically no other way to describe it. There is a breakdown in the bridge where, again, I think the bridges are some of the most immaculate on this record. There's just these change-ups that really catch you off guard, where we have this instrumental that is just very Eastern influenced and extremely beautiful. And then it kind of segues into her breathily kind of allowing just her voice to fill like a cathedral the space around you, and you feel like she is this like fairy goddess just sort of lofting through the forest. It's very ethereal, very beautifully delivered, and definitely a highlight for me for this record. The idea of an unwanted garden, that title always intrigued me. You know, one could argue that the planet, to some extent, has been treated as such for so many years, particularly recently. It's so full of rich of flora and fauna, but it is treated as though it's not really necessary, or it's not as important as what we do to destroy it or neglect it, as she talks about. This is one of the songs I really wish that they officially released lyrics for, because Genius is guessing at the lyrics for this track, and I remember when it was first released, there was no lyrics whatsoever given. And, you know, they're not like a big group. There's not a ton of people who are trying to find this, and there's a lot of question marks. Lyrics that we can point out: tired of dancing in the forest field with the fairies singing to the strange, share laughter and dreams. I'm a yellow flower in an unwanted garden. I'm a sunny day when you should be smiling. Why don't you take care of me, take care of what you see, 'cause I am stuck in the ground in this unwanted garden. Have you seen her? Did you mean her? How did you treat her? Many moments of regret. I mean, there's so many gaps in the official lyrics for this track, and I really would love for them to officially let us know what they're actually singing, because I definitely get the idea of the personification of Mother Earth as she, and also as the idea of nature and growth as God, as something that, you know, we need to treat with more respect, that we need to pray to in respects, not in a dogmatic way, but in a way that we're giving it attention, that we make sure we are actually watering this garden, that we are not just neglecting it, and also not taking it for granted. It may look pretty and you're like, oh, this is beautiful, but what are you really doing to keep it alive? Are you really actually working towards that? The song ends with this existential proclamation of, I can't seem to get that far away out of here. I can't seem to get off my feet. I seem to hear that lyric, even though it's not written in Genius. I seem to understand that there's sort of this idea of, at the end of the day, the earth being stunted, or the true potential of it being stunted because of the disconnect that humans have with it and how we're abusing it. This is definitely the most esoteric track on this record, and it is definitely a song that I believe is very spiritual and sacred, for that matter. It's the type of music that I would build a shrine for. You know, like this is my kind of church music, if that makes any sense. Like, I'm not a religious person. I believe that our greatest church is the natural environment, and that's where we should be really going to worship. Not indoors, unless it's raining, I understand, or the weather's inclement. But I definitely feel like this is a track that purely feels like a spiritual offering to divinity that is the natural world. So track 8 is called Outline. This actually did have a music video. It's a track you can't really sleep on because it actually is quite melodious and heart-wrenching. The idea of there's an outline in the sky. Is that outline of the moon or of the sun? Is that the outline of a cloud? It's a path, it's alive, and it makes me feel insecure. Who am I? I am so small. Cover me, shelter me from the storm, and when the sun's too bright, I'm turning to the stars. So obviously, in the night, I find a solace I cannot find from the day, and I try to glean any sort of meaning that I can from reality by looking up to the stars. I want to see the color blue the way I'm supposed to, and how I feel the beat of my heart the way that it's meant to. My life makes me hide, so I'm turning to the stars. Shine for me. Now I see, running as fast as I can while we cover and don't discover the subtle sparkles in the emerald eyes. Why do we do the things we do? Why do we say the things we say? Very existential, very esoteric, and again, something that is definitely spiritually aimed. I think that in these lyrics, they're not necessarily going for accessibility. They're going for pure, heartfelt expression of emotion and feeling. And the melancholy that is definitely heavily present in this track is such a beautiful blend of happy sad. I think it's definitely a track where you feel all of those emotions at once when you are, gazing up at the stars and truly feeling lost, where you don't really understand anything. And there's also kind of feeling of everything's going to be okay because everything is beautiful just in its weird chaotic form as it is. And that's a feeling that's very hard to translate into art, but it's something that I always look to artists like the Green Children for. They satisfy this existential kind of emotional connection, obviously the album being called that aptly, that I don't find from a lot of artists in, unfortunately, mainstream music. I feel the materialistic 3D world obsession so prevalent that it's hard to find that emotional resonance that I always am yearning for. And only specific artists that tend to be not very mainstream, because how the mainstream doesn't really like to pay much attention to things that are a little bit more nuanced or a little bit more underneath the skin and not so superficial. There's something that's actually quite rewarding, and it's all about emotion at the end of the day, right? So what does it mean that there's an outline in the sky? That can mean a million things. It's an esoteric, abstract expression of something that is unexplainable. That's how I interpret it anyway. I mean, again, the Green Children don't give a lot of interviews. They don't have that kind of press. So they're not going to explain their songs overtly to you, and I don't want them to. There's an element of mystery around their songwriting and their creation process and inspiration that definitely needs to remain sacred, I think. I Can Do Anything, track 9, was actually a single off of this album. This is a very optimistic, uplifting pop track, singing I can do anything over and over until you say it long enough and over enough again that it basically is manifesting that in your life. I truly do believe it. I remember listening to this track, and I was at a kind of dark place in my life, and just feeling a little bit disconnected from how optimistic it was, because I was just like, I really don't feel like this is true. Like, can I really do anything? And it really does speak to where your head is at the time. And now I do feel as though I understand the mindset that you need to have whenever you're going through life is one of endless possibility. The idea that you are limited, whether that is actually true or not, is irrelevant, because that's only going to keep you from opening doors that you otherwise wouldn't open. The childlike, playful idea, carousels and fireworks, roller coasters, all the references to what it feels like to be with someone, to be in love with someone. It feels like a roller coaster, fire wheels, carousels. This is what love can do. Everything changes with the rain, shivering on my spine, but I won't let it take me down this time. So when the rain falls, it's when I actually feel the most power to change my life. When I feel the most inspired is when I'm beaten to the ground. An attitude that you really need to adapt in life. If you really want to, blossom to your full potential, you need to learn how to take the rain and use it to be the actual vehicle for growth that it truly is. Rain is positive and negative, and you need to learn to see the positive. There's definitely that medieval, beautiful melody that I feel comes through very strongly on this track. It's very easily accessible. It's a very ear-pleasing tune that will get stuck in your head because it's repetitive and exuberant. My favorite track on this record is actually one that they did not pen themselves in terms of the music structure. The lyrics themselves are their own. It is sung in Milla's native language, Norwegian, which I love. I'd love to see more Norwegian lyrics for their music because it adds another element of mystery. I know it's just another language, it doesn't mean anything, but it's definitely evocative of the Norwegian landscape where Milla is from, which is a beautiful country that she is quite proud of. And you can definitely hear the word fjord in there several times, as she does live in a village she's from a village called Alesund, which is definitely right in the middle of these beautiful fjords on the coast. And Norwegian Dream literally feels like flying through vistas of scenery in Norway. There's no better way to describe it. It uses, though, a melody from something worlds apart from this. If anyone is unfamiliar with the show Miami Vice, the music comes from the theme song to that show. I know. You may be thinking, why does a CSI cop show from the 80s tie into the sort of mysterious, esoteric nature of a song like Norwegian Dream? To be completely honest, I don't really think there is much correlation, except that I think that this show was just something they remember watching a lot as kids. They grew up in the 80s, and I think that they just really loved the melody for the song. And the melody just stuck with them, and they decided, you know what? Let's incorporate this into our own song. We're going to, obviously with permission, I believe they did ask permission, obviously, to appropriate this melody to our own devices. And it is a beautiful melody. It is definitely one that invokes adventure or of travel, and probably has some of the most exquisite production work we ever yet seen from Marlowe. The organic, earthy sounds that he has in almost drum-like tribal elements are very strong on this track, and it ends on that note very primally, almost like landing deep down into the forest. And it's a beautiful closing track to this record. And I remember when I first heard it, just literally falling to the floor, like just like this is exactly what I've been looking for their music, and something that I hope to see more of. This is that kind of transcendental, mysterious, kind of exuberant music that definitely keeps artists like me inspired. Let's just put it that way, because it's inspirational, and it's hard to put into words the sort of exuberance and euphoric nature that it imbues. I definitely think it's great, you know, for exercise, but it's a beautiful, uplifting, up-tempo track. I highly recommend it. Milla's vocals in her Norwegian tongue are just beautiful, and almost even more better suited, I think. Just there's something about, I think, when people sing in their native language, it's just always adds like an element of authenticity, and also a kind of a back to basics kind of idea of like coming back home. So all in all, it closes out a beautiful, albeit quite short record, which I did wish had more songs. There's no bonus tracks, no deluxe edition, just 10 songs, and they definitely all tell beautiful little stories. The inspirations of Enya, Grimes, different artists from all over. You know, they always cite Michael Jackson as an influence. You know, all over pop, all over, you know, the indie alternative sphere as well. They're definitely a multifaceted group who can deliver tons of different things to suit everyone's needs. And I definitely think it's worth checking out. So if you have not checked them out, please do so after hearing me ramble about them for a half hour. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and I am looking forward to their third studio album, which, big exciting announcement, they have just announced, as in literally a few days ago, that their first official single from this third album will be coming out on August 24th. So we don't know what it's called yet, but I am super, super excited. They've been teasing that new music is coming for quite some time now, and they are finally getting us into this era. So it's been 5 years. It's time for a new album from them, and I'm very, very excited. I do think, or I'm very hopeful, it will come by the end of this year, but if not, definitely early 2019. I mentioned them as one of the big artists in my fall 2018 predictions video, so keep an eye out for them. They're definitely about to make a big return, and I am hoping they have a really good deal set up to release new music, so that they don't have to be quite so independent, and they can get a little bit more help in terms of music video budgeting. I know they were just filming a music video last month, so I'm very excited to like see where they're going from there. Thank you again so much for watching. Peace, love, and light. Bye.